everyone, to our third episode of Making Waves, the show from the Chicago Maritime Museum all about our city's past and present on the water. I'm Madeline Crispell, the museum's curator. With me, as always, is Sari Breslin, our education director.
Thank you, Madeline. We have two very special guests with us today. We have Commander Tim Tilghman and Lieutenant Elizabeth Flint, who are here to talk to us all about the Coast Guard's 9th District, the Guardians of the Great Lakes, who are responsible for the 5 Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Lieutenant Elizabeth Flint serves as the branch chief for facility inspections and incident management at Marine Safety Unit Chicago since she reported in June 2021. In this position, she leads a team in the regulatory compliance of safety and security standards for facilities transferring oil and hazardous materials to waterside vessels and responds to pollution within federal navigable waterways in northern Illinois and Indiana.
And with us also is Commander Tim Tilghman, who joined the Coast Guard in June of 2000. Tim is a marine safety professional with law enforcement and defense operations experience. Tim's most recent assignment was the role of the Chief of Prevention Marine Transportation System at Sector Houston-Galveston. This is a follow-on assignment after his role as the Chief Inspections Division of Sector Houston-Galveston. Prior to assignment at Sector Houston-Galveston, he served on the District 7 staff in Miami, Florida, where he was responsible for vessel inspections and investigations oversight, as well as international port security. A big Making Waves welcome to both Commander Tilghman and Lieutenant Flint. We're so happy to have you on the show this week.
Thank you so much for having us. It's a privilege.
So glad to be here.
So I'm wondering, Sari, if you could tell the people a little bit about how the genesis for this episode came together.
Well, since you all watched our last episode of Making Waves, which was all about the Christmas ship, you know that the Coast Guard was integral in the modern-day Christmas ship. So since the Coast Guard was in town, we thought it would be a great idea to have these wonderful officers with us today. If you could talk to us a little bit about how the Coast Guard got involved in the Christmas ship.
And we have an image of the Christmas ship to show as well.
So as you said, the genesis, the history behind the Christmas tree ship is obviously the Ralph Simmons, the unfortunate maritime disaster that happened in 1912, where Captain Tilghman delivering Christmas trees and 16 of his crew delivering Christmas trees between Michigan and Chicago for needy families, unfortunately lost their lives. That was the original ethos or original premise for this event. And so in 1999, approximately 25 years ago, which was making this year the 25th anniversary, there was an outreach to the Coast Guard to celebrate that evolution or that event, and making sure that we could be a part of it by possibly utilizing one of our Coast Guard cutters to be the delivery mechanism and now embody the Christmas tree ship spirit. And so we selected Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac to do that, and have been using Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac except for 1 year as a one-off since 1999, and looking forward to doing it every year. It's a really great opportunity for the Coast Guard to engage civically with the community, a great way to combine the communities of Michigan and Illinois, and most importantly, an excellent way to provide Christmas trees to needy families. And it just makes it a really special event for us every year, and we're really thankful to be a part of it, and couldn't be more thrilled to do it every year.
And we are so thankful. It was a wonderful event.
Now, the history of the Christmas tree ship is interesting in that it connects a little bit to the history of the Coast Guard in the region. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the history of the Coast Guard in the Great Lakes.
Ms. Flint, would you like to?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, the history of the Coast Guard in the Great Lakes is essentially the story of American history. I would say that you could more than likely begin looking at the Coast Guard in the Great Lakes in 1812. After the War of 1812, the Coast Guard had a revenue cutter positioned in the Great Lakes to enforce tax law and customs collection.
Important to do.
But also for observation and engagement with any type of hostilities coming from Canada or the United or the British Empire at the time period. And so as you move along the American timeline, so you have us participating in customs enforcement in 1812. You have Coast Guard cutters moving from the Great Lakes to go participate in with the Union in defense of the Union during the Civil War, during the War of. During the Spanish-American War, you have Coast Guard cutters participating in that as we try to defend the country and as expansionism is taking place. And then moving into World War One. Moving into World War II, where the Coast Guard cutter Escanaba, famously defending a convoy in the northern Atlantic Ocean, was sunk by a German U-boat. You have the Coast Guard participating in Vietnam, in the Korean War. Sorry that I got those out of order in historical basis, but all the way up to, I even served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn. So you have the Coast Guard history moving along, and obviously small connections to the Great Lakes, but that's the history of the Coast Guard in the Great Lakes, and we have obviously been a part of numerous rescues on the Great Lakes. We have over 6,000 personnel serving in the area, hundreds of vessels, we have aircraft, and we have a significant presence on the Great Lakes because of the invaluable component that the Great Lakes are to our national economy and to the world's economy. So I'm sorry, I kind of droned on, and I wanted to pass it off to Liz.
All right.
That's all right. So as Commander Tilghman mentioned, we kind of started with the Revenue Cutter Service, but in addition to that, following the War of 1812, we had the Lighthouse Service and the Steamboat Inspection Service and the Life Saving Service that were all kind of showing up in the Great Lakes around that time. They noticed sort of a gap in saving lives. Any coastal location needed that, and so that started in the Great Lakes as well, and eventually all came together to become the Coast Guard.
I think you supplied some images for us of some of your rescue, the ice rescue training. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. So our station personnel are usually responsible, so we call them response personnel, are usually responsible for executing the ice operations mission. So the Coast Guard has 11 major missions, and I'm sorry I'm going to hit them all for you, but I'm going to try to do them as succinctly as possible and quickly as possible. But you have defense operations. We have our drug interdiction. We have migrant interdiction. We have our ports and coastal waterway security component and other law enforcement activities that we're responsible for. Then we also have our prevention mission, which is our marine safety, our inspections, our investigations. We have our living marine resources mission. We have our environmental protection mission. We have our ice rescue mission right there, search and rescue, and then of course our aids to navigation and ensure safety of navigation flow of shipping on all the major waterways. So as you can see, ice operations is something we're responsible for, and since we are congressionally mandated to do that, and obviously we are positioned in areas where there is ice, primarily our role in ice is to break up the ice and make sure shipping can take place.
We also have a photo of the ice
too?
being
Exactly,
broken by
yes.
one of the Coast Guard vessels. So it's not just rescues
Right.
on the ice,
Exactly.
you're also clearing the ice
Yes.
to make way for commerce.
But isn't that kind of a rescue? Wasn't that
Oh,
freighter
absolutely.
stuck in the?
Yes.
It was, yeah, it was that boat came out to free the freighter so they could go continue on its mission.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And we have had numerous rescues of individuals who have been stuck on ice floes while ice fishing, individuals who maybe have not understood the precarious nature of walking out on ice and the possibility for ice to break away. So we've had, that is one of the reasons why we have to have that training and be prepared for ice operations.
Wow. Search and rescue.
So I understand you have a photo of the Coast Guard rescuing 10 people from the water in Traverse City. Could you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, so I think search and rescue is probably the Coast Guard's most famous mission. When you think
Right.
of the Coast Guard, you think of search and rescue, saving people, helicopters coming, saving people after hurricanes, things like that. But of course, summer in the Great Lakes is a beautiful thing to behold, and sometimes people don't plan very well, or just accidents happen. So the Coast Guard is always standing by. We've got, like in that photo, we have 2 different air stations in the Great Lakes, and often work alongside our small boat stations to conduct that search and rescue mission.
So it's not just boats, it's also helicopters.
We try to pride ourselves on we will save lives by all means necessary. So.
Oh, and we have a photo too here of a helicopter doing a full-scale mass ice rescue drill on Little Traverse Bay. How about that?
And as you'll see, the individual that is suspended in animation from the from the helicopter. Those are the pride. Some of the pride of the Coast Guard are enlisted rescue swimmers. These are our most elite lifesavers. Most of them sub-Olympic, if not Olympic swim times.
Wow.
If you've ever seen the movie The Guardian, the scene of them in the pool, if you think that's dramatization, that is not. They are as active and aggressive in the pool as you would expect individuals who are going to be required to jump into harm's way in a maritime situation, in open ocean or on the Great Lakes, in a storm or in calm seas, to be able to rescue multiple people. And so they train for that. So that is reality.
So are all Coast Guard, are they all divers? Do they all? No.
Not
You got
everyone
specialties.
is.
No.
There are specialties within the service, but those are our most elite lifesavers, and they are special. Usually the youngest and best looking of us, too.
Or at least they think so.
Now, this is certainly my conception of the Coast Guard on the Great Lakes, is rescuing people, especially in the winter with ice. But, you know, I know that there are a lot of functions the Coast Guard has on the Great Lakes. I'm wondering if you could tell the people at home a little bit about some of the unexpected things the Coast Guard is involved in on the Great Lakes.
Absolutely. So actually what Commander Tilghman and I, our specialty here is the prevention mission. And one of the things that I like to focus on is marine pollution. So we get, especially the Great Lakes, due to its providing so much drinking water to most of the United States, it is so important to keep the Great Lakes clean and clear.
Absolutely.
Love our water.
Yes.
Love our water.
Pollution response is very big, and here in Chicago, we pride ourselves on our architecture tours.
Oh.
I don't know if that's one of the things when people visit Chicago. They want to learn about Chicago, they go on an architecture tour.
Right.
So one of the things that the Coast Guard does is we provide regulatory compliance of these vessels. They're taking so many passengers every day. It is so important that these things are safe and secure.
Right.
And so the Coast Guard will do these regulatory compliance. They do inspections.
We have
on
a
these
photo
vessels.
of one of these vessel inspections, I believe.
Yeah, crawling
look at
tanks.
that.
Yes.
Crawling tanks. It's very important. You know, they're going in there making sure that the steel is sound, making sure everything is in good condition. And so, like I said, I was talking about the architecture tours, but this is for all commercial vessels. So the Lakers, the big vessels coming into and out of port, all of that. We get all those types of vessels, any kind of commercial vessel.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested that it's the Coast Guard that takes care of our drinking water, and that's your specialty. You do the spills, and you know, you don't think about oil spills on the lake. You hear about oil spills happening, you know, in the ocean, like
Yes.
not on Lake Michigan.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
We also know, you know, from our episode last week, or last month, I should say, that the changing of buoys is part of what the Coast Guard does. And again, our audience knows I love a buoy question. So if you could tell us a little bit about that as well, about what that process looks like, why it's happening, why we need different buoys. Very interested in that.
So sorry to give all these stats that probably no one will ever remember, but we're responsible for technically 6,700 miles of coastline in the Great Lakes. It gets much larger if you look nationwide, but those coastlines come with hazards to shipping. There are areas of what we call shoaling, but for the layman or just for a general audience, places where the water isn't as deep as the boat is, and that could be problematic, right? So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we mark and indicate where those hazards are, so the people that are shipping and people who are boating, even recreational boaters, so they understand where the hazards are and they can avoid those areas. And that's our aids to navigation. We're aiding the navigation. Now, obviously, because of the temperatures that happen here in the Great Lakes area, if we were to leave those aids all the time, they could possibly freeze. freeze, and there could be some deformation that could cause a problem. So what we do is we try our hardest to retrieve those when we know that shipping is going to be limited. And obviously, we retrieve the ones that we do a risk analysis on, and those present the lowest amount of risk. And mainly because you're not going to see too many recreational boaters just hanging out for the weekend.
In January,
Right, when it's negative 15 like it is right now, I think. So what we do is we remove those, and that way when we place them back into the water in the springtime, and they're ready for everyone to use them in the summer during the boating safety
So
months.
we have an image of Operation Spring Restore.
Yes,
Is that this
that's
program?
exactly, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. And what you have is a Coast Guard buoy tender moving a large aid, and what we would call a red nun. And that aid is going to be put back in place so that shipping can happen. And I do not have the exact specific location where they're at, but I know somewhere a ship is going to be operating safely because that aid is there and operating properly.
Wow.
Also, it gives us time to do maintenance because those aids come along with sound signals and lights. So we replace batteries, we ensure the acoustics are appropriate, we make sure the visibility of the light reaches the appropriate luminosity so that it can be seen from the right distances for everyone to make it as safe as possible.
And you had mentioned for recreational boaters as well, and I'm thinking as a recreational boater, they're the ones that need it more than anything else.
Yes.
And lots of times they're not the ones that know what to look for.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the recreational boater, and I don't know if we could pivot off of ATON to this, but one of the things that we do that's kind of out of the ordinary that some people may not think of is we provide education. We have a component called the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is a volunteer arm of the Coast Guard where we have interested and concerned citizens who are very familiar with the maritime community. Many of them are retired Coast Guard officers or retired Coast Guard enlisted personnel, retired instructors, and they take the time to teach recreational boaters about how to be safer when they operate. And of course, talking about aids to navigation is key.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're aligned with those aids the right way so that you don't end up in a dangerous situation.
Know which side of the buoy you should be.
Exactly.
Which is really
Red right returning.
yes. I remember that all the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Captain Dave Truitt was auxiliary
Yes,
Coast
yes, he
Guard.
was.
How about that?
Yeah.
Now, you both brought up now, I think, things that our audience may not expect the Coast Guard's involved in. I'm sure that both of you in your own careers and the way that you entered the service, you've had some kind of unexpected things. And I'm hoping that both of you, Lieutenant Flint, Commander Tilghman, Tim, Liz, can tell us a little bit about how you got into the Coast Guard.
Sure.
Go ahead, sir. You
Okay.
can get started.
My story is not very glamorous. I needed to go to college. I saw the bill that the school I originally wanted to go to was, and I wasn't getting any scholarship money. So
That's a familiar story to many who will be listening.
Yep.
And I was blessed to have the opportunity to meet the Coast Guard Academy football coach at my high school. And I was invited for a visit, and I went there. I fell in love with the campus, and something just worked there. And I ended up going to the academy and surviving the arduous 4 years. It's a beautiful campus, an unbelievable education, and an incredible opportunity to serve your country while going to school, and then to be prepared for a commissioned job as soon as you graduate. So, it just everything aligns so that you're going to put together your career along with your education, and it also provided me for an opportunity to have just an unbelievable life. I met my wife while I was in the Coast Guard. The best man at my wedding was my best friend from the academy. I have this unbelievable privilege by God to serve here in the world's greatest city, Chicago.
That's right.
So I just that's my Coast Guard story. Sorry, it doesn't have a lot of
Where's the
excitement to
academy?
it, but the academy is in New London, Connecticut.
New London, Connecticut. Anybody wants to go there?
Absolutely, yeah. So similarly, not very exciting, but when I was in high school and I was thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I had no clue. And I have 3 older brothers, and then I looked at them and I was like, who's doing well? Who's living a good life, doing good things? And 2 of them lived at home, and one of them was living in Detroit, Michigan in the Coast Guard. And I said, you know what? Free college, a job. I don't know what I want to do, so that sounds like a great place to start. And it truly was. I've made so many excellent connections through the Coast Guard, and I've gotten to, travel internationally, see really cool places, meet really cool people, and do things that I never would have done in any other kind of job. And so I've been so thankful for just kind of being able to look up to people and to have had this experience.
But I also heard that you were involved in AI and quantum computing.
I got my degree in operations research and computer analysis.
How about that?
The Coast Guard Academy has 9 excellent majors to choose from, now including sort of information technology. So for anybody who's interested in kind of doing anything, you can do anything in the Coast Guard. You want to be a lawyer? You can do that in the Coast Guard. You want to be a doctor? You can start your career in the Coast Guard. It's got so many options. It is an excellent place for just about anybody. There's a place for anybody in the Coast Guard.
Now, we unfortunately only have a couple minutes left with you today on our episode, and I'm wondering, how do people find out more about how to get involved? This sounds great. If you're like, hey, I've got a law degree but I want to do it in the Coast Guard. How do they find information about recruitment or learn more about you?
Yeah, great question. So one great option is gocoastguard.com. That is our sort of hub for recruiting. But here in the Chicago area, we do have a Coast Guard recruiting office, and they would love to hear from anybody who's interested in joining. They will have all of the answers, and if they don't, they'll find someone who does, and they'll work really hard to help anybody who's interested. There's so many different careers. We've talked about going officer or enlisted, but and Commander Tilghman also spoke a little bit about the auxiliary. If you just like to help out without going kind of all the way in, auxiliary is an excellent option. They do so many good things. And you can stay and work as a civilian in the Coast Guard as well, and there's so many different options.
And they have an awesome logo.
Yeah,
Very
let's
cool
show
logo.
that logo
Show that
before we
logo.
get you out. Look at that. I mean, that would look cool in the back of a jacket, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
And what were you going to say?
I was just going to say
Commander?
also there's the reserve component, which I know a lot of people are familiar with because of having family members or their themselves being part of the National Guard or the Army Reserve or Navy Reserve. The Coast Guard also has a reserve component too that you can join, and also provides the benefits of being provided with GI Bill access, healthcare access, and an opportunity to serve in that capacity, which we are always looking for. And so, and then of course the logo, as I said earlier, greatest city on earth, the city
Absolutely.
of Chicago. So we wanted to make sure we honored, the bears, and also there's a connectivity between the Coast Guard Cutter Bear and obviously the Chicago Bears. So we wanted to make sure we honored the city in our own special way for allowing us to serve you all, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. And what could be more important than the guardians of our greatest resource of fresh water, the people who are making it so we can sail in the summer and break ice in the winter. Thank you, Liz, Tim, so much for joining us this week. As always, the Chicago Maritime Museum is open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. Come down to see us to learn about the Coast Guard and all kinds of other things. Chicago's maritime past and present.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you for your
importantly.
service.
Thank
I
you
honor
for your
serve.
service. Thank you.